inserting new records by hand all the time would be no fun, especially when we do work with massive data sets. One thing we can do to make our lives a little bit easier is to write a JavaScript function that will insert new records for us. That way we could then use code that calls that JavaScript function as necessary. For this, we don't actually expect that you guys know JavaScript to do this, but there's a very good template that you can use on page 140 of the textbook, 7 Databases in 7 Weeks. So if you look at page 140 at the very top, you'll see that they give JavaScript code for creating a new function called insert city. So we're going to follow that example, and we'll see that ours is just as easy to create. So what we'll do is we'll begin by typing just what's there, function, and then I'm going to call my function insert wedding, since this is a function to insert new weddings into the October collection. Notice that I'm using a capital W. You don't have to, but I'm going to. And again, we get the 3 dots to indicate that I'm on the next line. And what I'm going to insert for a wedding is going to be event type, facilitator, and then I'm going to insert minister, and then we'll have the date, and we'll have the time. So those are the 6 fields that I'm going to insert for a wedding. Okay, so that's the list of fields that'll be inserted, and then now I'll actually create the code that inserts them. So I'll close my parentheses and then I open a brace, and I'll do db.october.insert, and we can see here the strength of MongoDB being JavaScript based, is we can actually create these functions in JavaScript, and the functions that are already existing that we've been using are JavaScript functions, so we can just embed them right in here. So db.october.insert will insert new records, and what we're going to say is event, and then we'll plug in the value that we give when we call the function for event here. So we'll say event colon event, and then a comma, and we'll do that for each of the fields that we're going to insert. So type colon space type, and so on. So facilitator, same thing. And so it'll take the values that we put in when we call the function, and it'll fill them into those spaces for us. And then minister, and then for date, we want to be careful here. Again, remember we want to use the ISO date function so that it actually puts the date in as a date. So when we call the function, we need to make sure that the date is formatted correctly in quotes. And then time. And that will create our function. I just need to clean it up here a little bit here. So I need a closing brace for the db October insert call, closing parenthesis, and a semicolon. And then I need to close the brace for the actual function code. And you can see I'm back to my prompt, which means it has agreed with me that the syntax seems to be correct. And now I can use this function to insert a wedding. So what I'll do is I'll type insert wedding, and then I got to tell it the values. So the first one on the list was the Little Oster wedding. So that's the event. And then the type is wedding. The facilitator is going to be Jacqueline Strong. The minister is going to be, for this one, Ken Schmidt. And then we've got the date and the time. So the date is 2014-10- and for this wedding it's 04. And then this wedding is at 13:30 hours, or 1:30 p.m. Okay, so and then I close my parentheses, hit enter, and it should have inserted that wedding into our collection now. So if I do db.october.find, we can see here that I still have that first event that I inserted, the Dog Days of Kalamazoo event, and now I also have the Little Oster wedding. And you can look and see that all of the values seem to be inserted correctly. Okay, so I'll put the other two weddings in as well, and I'll confess that I've typed the code up ahead of time to do that. So I will copy and paste it into the terminal window, which is a useful thing to be able to do. So you can see here I've got the code for inserting the Henkel-Williams wedding, and then I'll copy in the code for the Justin Leclerc wedding as well. And now if I do db October find, we can see we've got all four events in there. Right now you see the Henkel-Williams wedding has gone in there, and the Justin Leclerc wedding. And again, I can also do db October count if I just want to know how many events there are, and now we have 4 events. And so that was a JavaScript function to insert new weddings. We wrote the function, and then we used the function to actually insert the weddings. So again, we're not expecting that you know a whole lot of JavaScript coming into this. I hope that that was a relatively easy process and that you can replicate it yourself for inserting other things as well. In the next video, we'll take a look at how we can actually make it a little bit cleaner even than what we just did.